Devotion and trust are angelic principles. Why is it angelic principles? It is angelic principles because it is a state of being that is required, that is almost permanent in essence. It is the natural essence of that frequency of light, that embodiment of light, that embodiment of knowing, of truth, of power, of source, of God. To come to know trust in the deepest possible way and to have an unbreakable devotion means to fully come to know yourself, to know God, to live as that essence through and through. I call it the missing piece. I always say this, but there is not one shadow, one trauma, one experience that has not served my expansion greatly. I cannot think of one. Because even in those moments where I asked, why did this have to happen? You could have just told me what to do. Why did this have to happen? If you told me what to do, I would have done it. Beloved, I realize now in hindsight that experience was not about me making a different choice or me making a conscious decision in that moment. It was about the contraction itself. It was about that muscle being torn. Because without the torn muscle, without that contraction, it would have been almost impossible for me to realize the strength and cultivate the resilience that I never knew I had within. And so things are not always black and white. And that is where the trust factor comes in. Sometimes the logical mind wants to say, but couldn't this have happened this way? Or couldn't that have happened that way? Or couldn't you just, Spirit had told me what to do? I would have done it wholeheartedly. It is not that simple. It is not that black and white. And it is most often not that clear. But there's a design and a purpose behind that. Because trust is not about clarity, is it? Trust is blind faith. Trust is having such an anchored faith within, despite not knowing how bad or good things will become. But then again, bad or good is just a perspective, isn't it? One person's bad might be perceived differently as another person's bad. A client can come to me and say, this horrible thing is happening to me at the moment. But then from my perspective, because I've walked a similar journey, perhaps, I'm looking at it as an opportunity. And so what trust therefore calls within each and every one of us in every given moment is sometimes just a shift of perspective, because it is calling forth from us to have a deep level of blind faith. But you cannot have trust without devotion. I call it the missing piece, because if I look across my entire lifespan in this incarnation, those are the two ingredients, the two angelic principles, which can be the overarching topic for many other sub-themes. But those has been the two main ingredients for me in bridging the gap between the suffering I was experiencing, and the expansion and embodiment and the experience that I desired to have. And so it was many years of cultivation, many years of surrender. But one thing I didn't falter in was my devotion, my commitment to the path. If you are sitting here today and you are in this container and you are listening and receiving this beautiful transmission that has been prepared for you today, that means you have had and you are immensely devoted to your path, to your well-being, to your awakening, to your enlightenment, and to your coming home. The aspects that we naturally and automatically default to are what we call personas, created selves that have lovingly wanted to protect us throughout the years and the decades of our lives. And so all of these personas and default mechanisms of control, of aggression, of self-protection, anger, victimhood, all of those defaults has been put in place by self to protect us, right? To protect us. But once we walk this journey of healing and expansion and enlightenment and self-realization, we come to a point where even those parts that has been trying to keep us safe is ready for dissolution, is ready to be dissolved, is ready to be integrated back into the truth of your being, that there is no need to have these mechanisms in place because you are an infinite source of light, power, truth, trust, devotion. These default mechanisms and personas were put in place, like I said, for protection, for the perceived experience of empowerment, love, trust. But it has always crumbled, has it not? It has never, it never sticked, it never stuck. It always crumbled. Why? Because it is not built on truth. It is not built on the very true core of your being. It is built out of fear. It is built out of separation. It is built out of lack. It is built out of mistrust. It is manufactured. It is not free. For even in those moments where you manufacture a sense of self that has been created to keep yourself safe, the controlling one, the victim, the good woman, the good girl, the good boy, even though those personas has been manufactured to keep yourself safe, it never truly has given you the sense of absolute, pure freedom. Because there's an innate immunity that you have when you know who you are, is it not? There's an innate immunity that makes you untouchable in essence when you know your power. When you know your truth, when you embody your truth, when you know what your authentic self actually feels like, when you actually know what your resonance feels like, not the you that you think you are or you think you should be, but the you that you actually are, underneath, below all of those constructs that you've been dissolving over the years through your healing practices and your surrendering practices. If the divine masculine does not have a stable container where the divine feminine feels completely safe with him, safe enough for her to let go, safe enough for her to be and flow unbridled, safe enough for her to be completely within her feminine essence. If he at any given moment defaults to a toxic masculinity, toxic masculine energy. The divine feminine automatically reverts to a masculine role. Doesn't that ring a bell? Think of you in a relationship in the past, perhaps. You in a relationship with a man or a woman, whatever gender, doesn't matter. And the moment you do not feel safe within this relationship or with this man, or there's a toxic energy in that experience, you do not feel safe. You begin to guard yourself once more, and you instantly move from a softness, divine feminine energy, to more of a masculine role, to more of a protective role, because the role of the divine masculine is the mind, and it is designed to protect the heart, the divine feminine. And so freedom, beloved master, in this context, within your own being, within your own body, is being able to feel safe within yourself, completely, naked, bare, open, receptive, flowing, soft. And when we are pulled out of that state, that natural state of being, due to a contracting experience or a triggering moment, we automatically default to these old personas of self-protection, masculinity, toxic masculinity, control, victimhood. We move into all of these different roles and states that we have designed to, like I said, protect ourselves. But it does not last very long because it is not true. It is not true. There's an inherent safety, trust, knowing within that we have forgotten. And especially forgotten in those moments when we have been challenged deeply. And so those moments are meant to challenge us deeply so that we can once again come back home to a resonance within self that is absolutely true in all its ways. Distrust is a huge missing piece for many, and it comes in waves. You know, we trust now, and then later on we are challenged and we feel this huge contraction, this huge threshold, this huge experience that does not feel great, and we move into a state of distrust once more. It is quite natural, it is quite normal, it is part of the journey. It is part of that fear mechanism. But when we distrust, what do? We want to control. We want to control the narrative. We want to control how things are going to unfold. We want to make sure things don't go the other way, to try and prevent certain things from happening. Control because we do not feel the safety within our own bodies and in our own being. We do not trust the flow of creation. We do not trust the unfolding of our path. We do not trust ourselves. We do not trust that life can take care of life, and it always does. And what we are called to remember today is that things are not always black and white. We cannot always see how things are going to unfold, and that can create a lot of mistrust within. It can bring up a lot of mistrust within, distrust within. And yet we are called to have a blind faith, a deeper trust, and a devotion to that trust, a devotion to our path. Beloved, and so we remind you today that there is an inherent safety within, an inherent immunity within that welcomes you home today. It's always been there. It is always accessible, not always easy, based on our own internal experiences, but it is always there. It never moves. It is unshakable. It is within you already. It is not something that needs to be created. It is merely just something that needs to be allowed. We have the intention of fully surrendering. But what we find is we find ourselves looking around us for proof of healing, proof of that surrender. We're waiting for that armored truck full of cash to pull up in our driveway. We're waiting for the beloved to walk through the door. And then we sit there and like, but I surrendered. Why isn't it working? Is it truly surrender if we are looking outside of ourselves for proof? Is it? And so with surrender, beloved master, it is, as we've said, a cultivation is not a one moment thing. And the trick with surrender is this. We surrender, we use the art and mastery of our awareness to begin identify when we are now looking for that proof of surrender, proof of healing, looking around ourselves. Is it working? Why isn't it coming? The moment we catch ourselves in those moments of seeking, grasping, searching, looking outside of ourselves for something to grasp at, bringing our awareness back to a surrendered state, a complete, fully surrendered state. Surrender is not truly surrender if we are looking outside of ourselves for proof of healing. For we look for proof of healing in the type of person we attract in the relationship. We look for proof of healing in our physical illnesses, in our well-being. We look for proof of healing in our abundance or financial status. We look for proof of healing in the connections we've made. We look for proof of healing just about every aspect and avenue of our lives, do we not? And once again, I say it is normal and it is natural. However, we remind you today, once again, it is not always black and white. And I'm being reminded of a personal experience where I was going through my initiation and I was having so many physical ailments and illnesses after my near-death experience. And I had already surrendered so deeply. I had already healed and processed and moved through so much darkness and contraction that even spirits came to me and said, Riana, well done. The magnitude of what you've just achieved is astonishing. But then I look at my physical well-being and I ask myself, but why am I not healed? And then I question, because I cannot see proof of the work that I've done. I look for proof of healing outside of myself, right? So I cannot see proof of the work that I've done. And I come to the realization eventually that my physical ailments or illnesses is not a direct correlation to the healing that I have done, to the processing and the integration and the embodiment and the level of consciousness I am anchored into now. It has got nothing to do with it. It can, but it also cannot. It can, but it also does not have to. In fact, the reason why I still had those physical manifestations of dis-ease was because those were the right grounds and experience for me to master a certain attribute, to master another level of surrender, perhaps, or just embodiment. And it had not been a reflection of the work that I had already done. And I say this today, we say this today, beloved master, because this is what we do. We do all of this work upon ourselves. We heal, we surrender, and then we look at aspects and avenues of our lives. We look outside of ourselves for proof of healing. And then when we do not see proof of healing, we move into a contracting space of distrust, of doubt, of self-judgment, of criticism, of anger, of aggression, of control, all of the above. Surrender, true devotion, true trust requires your full allowing, your full giving, your full receiving, your full faith. And to recognize in every given moment that things are not always black and white. Whoever needs to hear this today, things are not always black and white, that there is a design and a purpose behind everything. And if the logical mind is naturally going to assume certain things, right? But there's a greater master within that can override that assumptions, those logical brain thinking, those cyclical narratives of fear and lack. Divine trust. Trust. What does trust feel like in your body? For me, it feels soft. It feels secure. It feels safe. It feels warm. It feels like home. It feels free, freeing. It feels like I can completely be my authentic self without any judgment, criticism from myself. It feels like I have the space to just be. And I don't have to work so hard. I can just be and I can receive. I'm taken care of. That is what trust feels like in my body. What does it feel like in yours? Closing your eyes now for a moment and feeling into what trust, safety, freedom, surrender, divine devotion, unbreakable knowing, intuitive knowing. What does it feel like within your being now? As we activate and we bring forward the frequency of trust now. Yeah. And at first, when we are leaning into this frequency of trust within our body and in our being, within our minds and in our hearts, you might be coming up against emotions or thoughts or beliefs or resistances, and that can be normal. Parts of ourselves that still wants to keep ourselves safe and default to the old ways of being. Yet the divine calls you now in this moment to lean ever more deeply into the frequency of trust within your own being, within the portal of your own heart, within the vessel of your own being and body, within the sanctuary and the temple of God that you exist in and as. Breathing in trust now And exhaling any resistances, any senses of false freedom. And what carries the breath I'm hearing is your devotion. As I've said before, if you are here and you are listening to this, you have an immense devotion to yourself, to your path, to your unfolding, and to your expansion. So there is an aspect of you, a true aspect of you that understands that trust is inherent, that it is your natural essence, that it is your blueprint, that it is the very fabric that you have built or that you are created upon within and through. So it's not about creating an experience of trust. It is about leaning into the already frequency of trust that is in and within your very being, that flows through you like a river, always accessible, always there. Can we surrender so deeply that in those moments when we are looking outside of ourselves for proof of our healing or proof of our surrender or proof that things are working, can we bring our awareness back to that deep trust? Using the flow of our devotion. Devotion carries you into trust, does it not? Devotion is carrying you into trust. Devotion is carrying you into surrender. So devotion in this moment is symbolized as this container, as this boat that carries you towards and to allow your devotion to carry you to deeper trust, to carry you to deeper surrender, blindly. We do not know what tomorrow holds, the next week, next month. And sometimes it is difficult to trust the unfolding of our path because we want to avoid situations that seem difficult, uncomfortable, challenging. There's the sound again, just allowing for integration. But even in those challenging moments that we perceive might be coming, or we hope is not coming, no matter what transpires, can you trust that there is a gift, an opportunity in those moments? Can you use your stream, your container of devotion to carry you through those moments, knowing that it is only temporary, knowing that you have the capacity, the resilience, the courage, the strength, the wisdom to move through any moment of challenge? What is stopping you today, beloved, from surrendering even more deeply? And we are not asking you this question for an answer. We will just leave the question there, for sometimes the question is more important than the answer itself, is it not? It is merely a pointer inward. What is preventing you from fully surrendering completely? Without the need to look for proof of healing, without the need to look for proof of manifestation, proof of anything. What aspect of self is in resistance to that. There's no need to answer, as we've said. Just bring your awareness to that and allow the frequency of trust to transform it. Shine the light of consciousness upon it. Unbreakable devotion and trust as the missing piece. Think about that.